All right, we are here with Adeline Sporleder. And ma'am, if you'll take a moment to tell me, I brought you on, what is it exactly? Because this is kind of exciting. You're from our area, from the Ozark area. And
Yes,
right now you are doing a job in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill. Talk to me about what that is exactly.
absolutely. So I'm not exactly on Capitol Hill physically, but we do a ton of work with Capitol Hill. I'm working at the Bipartisan Policy Center, which is a think tank in DC that does a lot of work with Congress, essentially to come up with more effective policy, to create change within Congress members and to go back and forth with them basically about our objectives and specifically with the goal of creating more bipartisanship within members and being more collaborative. So that's the kind of work that I'm doing right now, and I have loved it so far.
You know, the logical response to anybody who doesn't work in DC and hears you say, my job is to encourage more bipartisanship in policy. The
Mm,
logical response is, that's got to be a failing mission, correct?
I think that's the logical response, especially if you're just going off of what you're seeing on social media and stuff, for sure.
But would that be an incorrect assumption?
I definitely would say so. I think there are a lot more people in Congress and outside of Congress, of course, that are operating a little bit more in the moderate field, or at least are open to collaboration and new ideas. I just think on social media, of course, the biggest, loudest, most controversial voices are the ones that are published the most often, as they're usually saying the most striking things. But typically, the bills, the laws that are actually pushed forward do end up becoming some kind of like bipartisan mesh, because that's the only way anything will make it far, is if people are willing to, collaborate, give and take on certain things within Congress. I think that stuff's just a lot less publicized, but we're trying to make that even more of a focus, trying to amplify the voices of those that are encouraging cross collaboration and working together, as opposed to those who are fighting it pretty harshly.
You know, it's so interesting, ma'am. I have state reps from the Missouri House visit my class all the time, and they say on the news we're squabbling because we're squabbling over kind of the highest profile stuff. But behind closed doors, we work together a ton, bipartisanly, if that's an adverb that I can use. Has that been your experience in the US Congress, or is it a little bit more reflective of what we're seeing in the news?
I think so. I do think the people you see in the news the most often are the ones that are less often working with organizations like us. They do tend to take like pretty strong stances on their own initiatives. But as a whole, I think there are a lot more people that are operating either in the middle or middle left, middle right. Maybe they're usually pretty far one way, but they're willing on certain issues to work with people that they align with. And part of my specific progress or project that I'm on at BPC is called the American Congressional Exchange Program. And we basically create trips for Congress members from different districts to visit each other's districts and learn about their issues. So, maybe one candidate had no idea that there were these issues with rescue missions in Utah because of all of their crazy red rock climbing and things that they have, but they go out there, they visit, they see it, and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize this was a thing. I'm going to be willing to work with you on a safety bill going forward. That's a specific example of something that we worked on in a bill that came out of one of our trips. So I think there are a lot more people that are open and willing to learn, and they just don't know as much about each other's districts, their individual issues. And once they find that stuff out, they tend to be a lot more collaborative than you would expect, which is exciting.
Have you gotten a chance to tour the Capitol yet? I actually got a
I
chance to do that
personally
I actually got a chance to do that this winter, and I had a great time doing it.
I haven't gone yet, but I have something scheduled in the next couple of weeks. I actually live in a household of people that are working at different places in DC. So my roommate is currently, I want to say, with the Senate rule. It's like the Committee on Administrations and Rules. And so she's actually on Capitol Hill right now and is taking all of us on our own little tours in the upcoming weeks. So I'm very excited to actually go in the building, see it
If she
myself.
works, if she works in the Senate, she may be with Holly and may have actually administered my tour. And just FYI for anybody listening, the silliest thing of the tour is if you go, actually everybody in the Senate and probably the House too, they don't actually work in Capitol Hill. They have their own offices adjacent to it
Mhm.
across the street. So if they want to go from their offices to Capitol Hill, they go into the basement and there's a tram and they took us down to check out the tram. And I was the only one in the tour group that was like, I ride the trolley, please. I want to be on the trolley. Can I do the Senate trolley? Ma'am, let's walk me through a role play here, because if I am a 18, 19-year-old student, I'm really kind of fired up about PLS, government, politics, and I want kind of a sweet intern gig like you have in DC. What path would you encourage me to potentially walk to be there someday?
Absolutely. So I would say mine was probably a little bit rockier than it would be for the person you're describing right now, because I started undergraduate school with a very different picture of what I thought I was going to do. I actually studied psychology and music when I was in undergrad and thought that I was going to be a music therapy major for a good chunk of my life, and then ended up transitioning for a bunch of different reasons into law. And I'm now a second year in law school. But because I didn't have a ton of political science experience in my undergrad, I do think I had to fight a little bit harder once I moved out here to DC to sort of advocate for myself and why I should be in a position like this. I think some of my roommates who had previous experience, maybe they were an undergrad intern in the House, like my roommate was an undergraduate intern in the Arizona House. And so I know that was kind of her foot into working with a like previous Arizona member who was out here in DC doing stuff. I think take any opportunity you can in undergrad to, even if you're not doing a full-on internship, maybe volunteer with a local political party. Maybe if you can get involved in your state's house, or any kind of local government, anything like that on your resume is just the topper off that shows that you have some interest and experience. But I'd say don't be discouraged if that wasn't always your path, or if you don't have that stuff, or you're a senior and you're just now getting into this, because I was able to come out here with relatively little past political experience and just, I think, showcase my personality and the specific issues that I care about, and was able to eventually find the right person who saw my potential and did a good interview with and ended up here. So there's all sorts of possibilities, but I think it would have been maybe quicker if I had had some kind of volunteer experience that was relevant in the past. So I definitely recommend trying if you
It's
can.
probably true with most career paths. The earlier you can get started, the better off you are. But I love that you're promoting that message of it's never too late to jackknife and go in a direction that's truer to you. And thank you for that recommendation of working with local offices and the local political parties. That stuff is great, worth its weight in gold. I completely agree, and I love to hear you say it. Last thing I'll ask you about before I let you go, I want to thank you just in advance for really taking time out of your day to waste with me. I appreciate that.
Of course.
Working in Washington, D.C., like, does it feel like you're in DC, or are you just so nose to the books that it's just like any other job? Do you actually feel the weight of the national task that you've been given?
I definitely do. I think so. A lot of my stuff that I'm doing for BPC right now, I go into the office occasionally, but I'm still probably primarily remote. We're like a hybrid office right now. So this is my room and workspace a lot of the days of the week. But even then, I think just living in the Capitol has been a very surreal experience. Just going on a walk around the neighborhood and seeing, the Washington Monument or the Lincoln Memorial, or seeing Congress people actively putting on like these big events, these discussions, these cultural events constantly. I think being here, even if I wasn't working in politics, would be a really amazing, worthwhile experience. But working on it, it almost feels a little imposter syndrome at first. You're like, oh gosh, you actually trust me, like this person who, just came from a Midwestern state and has little experience in this, to be working on such hot button issues. But it's also very empowering, very exciting. You feel like all the things you're doing are actually important and hopefully have an impact on a lot of people, even if not now, they might in a few years down the line. So I'd say I do notice that I'm working in DC compared to how I felt working anywhere else. It's just a different pace. Mm-hmm.
Adeline Sporleder, you have gone above and beyond. Thank you so much for taking your time with us. And if I am an enterprising 19, 20, however year old, and I'm wanting some advice or maybe some tourism advice, what would be the best way to get a hold of you?
Sure. So my school email right now is Sporled. It's like Adeline Sporleder, just the A, Sporled, but they cut off at the D, and it's at asu.edu, which I can type that up and send it to you to make it clearer so anyone can access that. I'm also on LinkedIn, by my full name, Adeline Sporleder, or on Facebook. If you just shoot me a little message explaining who you are, that you were a student and wanted to get in touch with me, I'll accept it. And I am very, very open to talking about DC, even just the little things about like housing or, cover letters, cold calls, networking. I feel like that's something I've been learning along the way and would definitely share with anyone who needed advice.
I will put your difficult email address in the caption for this this video. Thank you so much, ma'am, and best of luck going forward.
Awesome. Thank you.